Okay, well, let's get started. Good evening, good morning, hello. Very, very nice that you're here. We're on our the fifth class, the last class of becoming your best self. And it's been quite a journey around the traps, hasn't it? We started off with, well, we all want to be happy, but happiness is a lot more than just being entertained or being comfortable or experiencing nice sensations. That if we want to have a sense of satisfaction, we've got to go a little bit deeper than that. So the kind of happiness and satisfaction that we get from sharing, from helping others, from rejoicing in the good fortune of those we love, all of those kind of things is a lot deeper. And but actually the happiness that we're after is that one of a continuous natural development, developing our heart and our realizations, and that kind of inner fortitude and peace. It's not circumstantial. It can't be ruined by when the world changes. So we looked at those three types of happiness, and the most profound one being the happiness of the stages of the path to enlightenment, which is what we're on right now. Then we looked at what distracts us, the worldly concerns, worldly meaning that they're unstable, our unstable concerns. And most of our attention and energy is focused on things that we cannot control. Our comfort levels, our status and reputation, our sense of being a success and not a loser. All of these things that are very circumstantial and very dependent on others, and really depends on what context we're comparing ourselves in. There's always going to be someone better than us. So if what we're doing is comparing ourselves with others for our sense of worth, we're in big trouble. And those worldly or unstable concerns, what I've found often happens is, even if we start off with good intentions, with a real wish to help others or make a contribution to the world, if we're not careful, our good intentions become corrupted by these 8 worldly concerns. So guarding against them guards our best self and guards all of our good intentions and good-heartedness. Then also we need a whole lot more than just guarding against the corruption, the inner corruption. We need to train in some things that don't necessarily come naturally. So that we looked at the 3 higher trainings. So the training in ethics, and trying to have ethics that comes from within, not ethics that depends on being scared that you're going to get caught or wanting people to think that you're a good person, but your own sense of ethics, so that then when there is no external witness, you still act well, just naturally. And one of the things that we've seen many times is, of course, on the internet, a whole lot of conversations on the internet are so awful because there's no witness there. So people kind of just let rip. They're not sure. They don't know what's going on because there's no witness there. So there's nothing to stop them just saying things that probably later on they'd regret. We had the higher training in concentration. We need to be able to focus, and there's an epidemic of ADHD out there. A lot of my friends have ADHD, this, trying to focus by forcing your mind, and that doesn't work. We need to really develop a sense of concentration and being able to sit with a topic, and that can only come when we can sit well in our own skin without ethics. And those 2 things are for the purpose of developing wisdom, the 3rd training, which if we want to end our problems and if we want to be able to help others, we need wisdom. Just having a good heart, it's not enough. And last week, so I was talking to Alexis about this. She was saying, we looked at anxiety and depression, and Alexis was having a go at the worksheets. So a mixed bag of reactions. Tell me what you said, Alexis, about your sensation when you were doing the worksheets.
I felt like I was wearing a rough wool sweater with the tag sticking out. It was questions I didn't want to answer. And I'm really glad you had me ask those questions. And while we were waiting for people to come back, I was looking at the questions, and one of them, I think it was something that you think about in the morning. Let me look real quick.
In the morning, yes.
Oh, it says, discover your deeper goals. Ask yourself why you get up. And one of them I said, to make my ego satisfied, although it is never satisfied. So am I getting up in the morning and spending all this time doing things to make an unhappy ego less unhappy? I need to kick my ego out of here. So I realized, sorry, go ahead. So I realized that this kind of judgment, this little woman with a notepad who always writes things down that are never is going to make her happy, is still there. And I've been fighting her all my life, and I forget about her every once in a while, and then she just pops up. And doing this worksheet, I was reminded that she's still there, just sitting quietly in the corner, you know.
Well, that's right. And this is how Venerable Rabina talks about it too, which I found so incredibly useful, that of our housemates in our mind. And because, you know, I think when I was at school, I kind of realized that I was in civil war in my own mind. I was at civil war. I just so conflicted inside. And of course, we just want to get rid of the ones that we don't like. But actually what we've got to do is learn to live harmoniously. So it's so great that you kind of personified this as she's still there sitting in the corner, because now you can become actual friends. You know, so from writing the stuff down and keeping the journal, I found actually that is a far more effective way of meditating, of reflecting, and using our mind than sitting there with our eyes closed trying to do a review meditation or something, because meditation is supposed to be an activity. In Buddhism, it's about mind training. And if we're not used to it, if we haven't been doing it our whole life, and we're not, and we don't actually have the concentration built up, the way that we can capture it is by writing it down and journaling. It's so, it really is far more effective. And it's difficult, isn't it, to capture the words and put it down. It's difficult, but it's effective. So what we can do is just take the journaling up a level. So you do the reflection, and then you know, all the flatmates in your head, all the various mental factors, they have their say. You can capture what they say, put it down on paper and go, aha, that's what's going on. But what's so wonderful about Buddhist psychology that's quite different from Western psychology is that there's no second guessing. You have whatever's going on, and then you all get together and you adjust your motivation. So you don't think, oh, maybe unconsciously I'm thinking this and that and la, 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 and just on the top I'm trying to be good. Yeah, sure, that's how we start, but that's not, we don't have to settle with that. So we adjust the motivation. We bring everyone in line. All of those deep, dark, unconscious things going on, you just adjust the motivation. So, you know, the flatmate in the corner that's still there and still got their points to make, okay, use those points. And now we take it to the conclusion. So all of the Buddhist meditations are like that. You go through a process, and at the end is a conclusion. And the conclusion is the realization that you come to. And it's like having the answers, the answers of the book. So you go through your meditation, and if you don't get that answer, you've missed something in the meditation. It's really simple. And it means that the answers that we come up with, the conclusions, always are positive and help develop our mind and our heart. We can't fall into cynicism or being jaded. So when we're doing the journaling, it's good to do all of that reflection and then adjust your motivation, come to the conclusion. What does that mean from a Buddhist point of view? What's the conclusion here? And it uses all of that inner reflection on our stages on the path to enlightenment, which is that cumulative sense of happiness and well-being. So Alexis, I'm really glad you said that about the worksheets, because they are challenging, but that's why also I only left a couple of lines so that you've got an incentive. You know, it's only 2 lines to fill in. It's not a whole page. You can try and capture it like that. So let's actually set our motivation now. We can think, you know, what's brought us here is all of the various inner voices, urges, hopes, fears, wants, worries, everything has brought us here to this moment now. So even if we have a little bit of civil war in our mind, that's okay, because everyone's kind of in agreement that we're here. And so that's a good starting point. Often there is a main reason that we're attending a class of any sort, and that is our setting off point, but we don't leave it there, because it's usually a very immediate just thing to do with this week or this year or this life, which is quite short term. So whatever it is that got us here, then we think, well, definitely there are other people experiencing exactly the same thing as me. I may not know them, but they're going through the same thing. They're my people. So I'm doing this class for them. It's worth going through all of this so that then I can help others in the same boat as me, my people, my family, my spiritual family. Then we can take it even a step further and think, well, actually, everybody is my people. If we take it down to the level, no one wants to be sick, no one wants to be miserable, no one wants to be afraid. We all want to be loved. We all want to feel safe. We all want to relax, yet find it so hard to relax. We all, even if things look okay, we all have this existential suffering. So in this, we're all the same. Even the people I disagree with, even the people I see on the news and I don't like. This is what we have in common. So we can set our motivation then. May we be able to help everybody without missing out anyone. And not just the humans, but may we be able to help all the animals, the seen, the unseen. May we be able to look after the planet. Just by doing this class, may the effects flow on to everybody, and may it not just be a temporary fix, but may it flow on all the way to liberation and enlightenment. That's our purpose. No limits put on there. So with this motivation, what we're going to do is continue our adventure through becoming your best self. You know, last week we looked at the depression and anxiety and how that really hampers us, but there is a wisdom in there. And we touched on how a lot of what drives depression and anxiety is the momentum of habit. And so today we're going to look at the neurology of a habit pattern. Why are bad habits so difficult to break? Why does it take so much energy? And why do positive ones need energy? You know, so we never have to sit there and go, now focus on the resentment, you know, don't let your mind drift off the resentment, bring your mind back. It's like attention capture. But when we're trying to focus on recognizing the good qualities in others, it's very weak and fluttery, can't even recognize any good qualities in ourselves, you know, huge underestimation, and very difficult to develop our good qualities, to not run out of patience, but to strengthen our patience, all of those things. So why? And that's to do with the neurology of a habit pattern. So we're going to have a look at what happens, how in our circumstances now, how our brain is wired from a Western point of view, and then from a Buddhist point of view, how to break these negative habits, because there is a Buddhist solution to every single one of these steps. And it can be quite tricky to figure out where to start. we can start anywhere. In fact, we can just start at the easy bit and get started. That's perfectly okay, because there's something that we can do on each step of the cycle. What we can't do is break negative habit patterns through willpower alone. That just doesn't work. If we, try and be patient and not let rip with what we really wanted to say through willpower alone, that works while we have some spare energy. But if we're tired, if we get the flu, then all bets are off, isn't it? That's when unfortunate things come out of our mouth, because we don't have that energy for the willpower. So it's not a long-term fix. It has to be something more. We're going to look at the Buddhist strategies to actually deconstruct habits, not just force them down, but undo them so they're no longer there. And part of that, of course, is to figure out what to do instead, to not leave a vacuum. So let's have a look at, well, what is a habit? What a habit is: an acquired behavior, just done repeatedly, just a few times, and it becomes involuntary or automatic. So we're no longer aware that we're doing it. And some habits don't take very many times to actually develop like that. Once the precedent is set, then it's the next time is 50% more likely, then the next time 25% more likely, and sometimes even more. So this works for positive habits and negative habits. We develop a momentum through familiarity, and that's why we have advertising, because it doesn't matter about the quality of the ad. It's just with the familiarity. We know that's what works. So a negative habit is a lot more than just the overt negative habit. It has a double whammy, because a negative habit also takes us away from something beneficial. So not only are we doing something that may be overtly destructive, we may just have a habit like I have for years and years. When everything gets too much, I just have to have a nap, have a little sleep. But what can happen, of course, with depression is we just sleep all the time. So it's not overtly destructive, but it does take us away from something beneficial. So that's also part of a destructive or a negative habit. So our question is, well, what are we practicing right now? And when we look at our activities, how we spend our time each day, what is our practice, our default? How do we communicate with others? What's our default way of communicating? How do we treat others physically? And our mental habits, the activities in our mind that other people may not know about, but they just go on rumination on their own track. So when we actually look at what we're practicing right now, it may explain how come we're a little bit miserable, because often what we're practicing, what we spend our time doing each day, are negative habits. They actually may be quite destructive, or they might be just taking us away from the things that matter the most to us, from developing our good qualities. So it's a good way to look at this, that it doesn't become a value judgment. Oh, I'm a bad person. It's just we're looking at what's my automatic way of going through the day. Pretty much most of it is habit. And what's the flavor of that habit? So what I thought we'd have a look at the moment before we get into the happy part is, well, the habits for unhappiness. You might relate with these habits that create unhappiness or set the ground for unhappiness. So we have three main things: body, speech, and mind. So physical habits that we have, killing or violence. Like if we get used to expressing ourselves violently, when we're unhappy, if we smash things, if we stomp around, even if it's smashing just our own stuff, but if we actually express our anger physically like that, it creates a channel where it makes it easier to express violence and aggression. And when just doing that a few times, what it sets up is a natural escalation. So you might start by smashing stuff, your stuff, and you get the release of the energy, which feels good, but now you're practicing aggression, which has long-term negative consequences. So it's a real mixed bag. And so if we keep on expressing it, then the next thing we might smash is the dog or the cat, and then, you know, maybe the wall, and then maybe the face of the person there on the wall. So there is a natural escalation if we allow the habit to just go its natural course. Stealing as well, like many people have found in workplaces, that if you have a culture where just stealing bits and pieces, little things, is overlooked, oh, it doesn't matter, it normalizes theft. And so then it makes it easier for it to escalate until in the end, you have things like corporate fraud, because all the way along it's been normalized. And sexual misconduct as well. There's a saying going around at the moment of that the standard that you walk past is the standard that you accept. So we kind of think, oh, don't get involved is a neutral thing, but it's not. If we don't get involved, if we don't help the vulnerable, we're actually acquiescing to oppression, to sexual misconduct, or you know, all of the things of taking advantage of the vulnerable. So there is this natural escalation that happens. How if we're not aware of how we're expressing ourselves physically. There's also a lot of physical habits that are self-destructive. So they may not affect others, but poor diet, overeating or under-eating, which is not taking care of one's body. We would be shocked many times if somebody treated somebody else like that, but if we treat ourselves like that, oh, it doesn't matter. So we often can have a double standard for not looking after ourselves. Like I said about the sleeping, or alcohol, using alcohol as self-medication or as an escape, and even self-harm. So being able to not harm others, no retaliation, fantastic, keep the world a safer place. But where does all that aggression go? We might channel it to ourselves and self-harm. I mean, self-harm is a very complex thing, and it's also to do with issues of trying to experience a sense of control. At least I can control this pain. So it gives you back your agency, but it's not very skillful and it's unkind. So that sets up a momentum of unkind behavior. And a similar thing happens when we're looking at the verbal habits for unhappiness. So the worst verbal negative habits are lying, of course, hurtful or harsh speech, so speech that makes others wince, that harms them. It may not make you wince, but if it makes others wince, then it's harsh speech. Slander, speaking badly about others behind their back, or uncontrolled criticism. And then just gossip, kind of meaningless chatter, just shooting the breeze. You know, many, many hours can go by, but usually at the end of a good old gossip session, we're not usually inspired to go out and save the world, are we? We're normally just bagging everybody, you know, or rejoicing at the misfortune of others. It has a natural degeneration. You know, even the gossip magazines are like this. But I put some other things at a more subtle level here: nagging, trolls, and sarcasm. So unskillful verbal communication, where it becomes a habit. So that kind of nagging or picking on people, where it's just kind of underlies everything, and it's not very, the timing is not good, and so people just click off. They and then doesn't matter what we say, no one pays any attention to us. So nagging's really about our own wish for people to do what we want, or the picking on people is our own resentment of them, possibly even jealousy of them. And so we just let it just bubble along under the surface, but we're not actually looking at how can I change this situation. So I noticed with nagging that actually everyone just tuned out from me. And then I did some research and found out actually you just got to zip your lip and then pick a time, pick a good time, plan when you're going to ask really specifically, like own your needs, have the courage to ask, this is what I need you to do. And this is when I need you to do it, and then back off. It was the best advice. So then you leave the people to do it in their own time. And it brings the power back to your speech. So, nagging, sarcasm can be one of those things where sarcasm or even irony, it can be quite witty and intelligent, but if it doesn't often land well. So sarcasm can be very hurtful, and so it's counted as harsh speech. Irony, well, I mean, Australians are famous for being ironic, and I know when I went to Latvia and I said a whole lot of ironic things to my dear Latvian relatives, they didn't realize it was irony, and they were just horrified. They thought I was this racist, bigoted, horrible person. And I see their expression, I go, oh, something not quite right here, but I didn't click what was going on. And I didn't realize how much irony we use in Australia. I mean, it's all pervasive. So you've got to be really careful. But it becomes a habit, pattern. Hate speech, a lot of speech online, which is like indirect speech. And because it's indirect, because people would never say those things to their mum or to someone who was right in front of them. It's because it's indirect, and because our ethics are dependent on others, then there's nothing holding us back from really being unskillful with our speech. The stuff that comes up on Facebook, even in Buddhist groups on Facebook, it's really shocking. So also casual misogyny, casual racism, teasing people about being fat. These kinds of things where you can pretend, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. But actually, if we come from a position of power or entitlement, a privileged position, it doesn't mean anything to us. But actually, if you say those things to the vulnerable, it's incredibly hurtful. So there's a huge power in that. So we see a lot of harm come like that through the media. A lot of bullying as well, especially like in schools, a lot of bullying. Some kids even commit suicide because of that. So a lot of that, at first, on the surface, it's innocuous. You just think, oh no, it doesn't mean anything, but it has this huge effect. So a lot of these things are our own habits to create unhappiness. And the third one, the mental habits for unhappiness. So from the Buddhist point of view, the three main mental habits that create suffering in our mind and that are the groundwork for us to act negatively. Covetousness, which is when we feel, I just want what everybody else has. That's like that low level of covetousness. I just want what they have. It's this idea, what others have is brilliant and perfect, and why can't I have that? And if we let that thought run, it might just be with daydreaming, but there's a bit of resentment in there, and there's a bit of just wanting to take regardless of the consequences. And then it becomes full-blown covetousness. So covetousness is where we just want, and we're not aware what's going to happen. So, you covet your neighbor's wife. You start thinking about that wife and you want that wife. And you're not thinking about neighborly relations. You're not thinking about, I'm going to ruin a friendship of decades. You're just thinking, I just want what I want. So this sense of covetousness, as we know, I mean, there's a whole movie industry based on this, isn't it? Of then actually acting on that covetousness, and then the affair only lasts a few days, a few weeks, it's gone. So you don't have your object of desire. You also don't have your friendship of ages or the friends of the neighbors. You've got yourself into a whole lot of trouble, like it escalates. Just from this thought, I just want that over there. That thought that our happiness and satisfaction comes from out there. Ill will, malice. Well, that actually comes from blame. Thinking that our unhappiness, our suffering and our problems are because of others. So others are the conditions, but they can never be the root cause. The reason why we get upset about it and other people may not get upset about it is on us. It's our thoughts. So the ill will can manifest in quite small places. Like, for instance, if you have an argument with someone, but you manage to not retaliate too badly, but you go home and you replay the argument in your head. Oh, I should have said this and I should have said that. And you just replay the whole thing and you're the victor and you get them and you say the thing and in your mind you're rejoicing about it. Now that's practicing ill will. And so again, it normalizes it. It makes it has its own momentum. Then it becomes very easy for us to just focus on those negative things and thoughts of resentment and revenge. And if we ruminate on that, we're practicing it in our mind, and then it becomes very easy to express it. So mental habits for unhappiness are also just that thought of just wanting it to not be my fault. It's somebody else's fault. And it is okay if we're going to blame, but like we looked at last week, we've got to put the blame in the right place. And it's not them out there, it's not their fault. If we're going to look out there, it's actually the disturbing emotions and confusion and fear and hatred in their mind that's their fault. It's not them. We can't also point at ourselves and go, oh, well, if it's not their fault, it must be my fault, because no. What this nascent, beautiful, best self that we're trying to liberate, it's not that fault. If we're pointing in, we've got to point at the right thing, which is the afflictive states of mind. Don't point at your good self. So then that way it'll guard against escalating into self-harm or self-loathing. Got to make sure where we point the finger is actually a correct one. So Venerable Robina, years ago, one of the teachings that she gave here, and someone had really, really low self-esteem, self-loathing, felt terribly bad about themselves and their inability to do anything worthwhile in the world. And Venerable just like pretty much verbally jumped on her and said, well, look, listen, have you killed anybody? And this girl's like, no. She's like, do you lie? No. Do you steal? No. Do you rape your children, or are you a standover man or anything? No. She said, well, what are you talking about? You're already a good person. The very fact that you don't do these things counts. It counts for something. So those habits for unhappiness that we normally engage in, those unskillful activities of body, speech, and mind, if we're able to refrain from those, we are already a good person. But because holding back, not being reactive, refraining from harm minimization, it's not obvious. And so then we don't appreciate it in ourselves. So it's worth bringing your attention to that and actually appreciating your efforts. And it might be that you go out into a day and it's really difficult. You might be battling the whole time to not retaliate with your speech, to not smash your fist down on the table. And you come home and you're exhausted. You go, oh, what a horrible day. But actually, it's just horrible from a worldly concern point of view because it wasn't pleasant. But from an inner point of view, it's a good day because all the way along, you tried to curtail your negative habit patterns and you tried to express those things that are really meaningful to you. And it might have been a battle the whole day and you may be exhausted and demoralized, but actually that's a good day. We look at it from that deeper level, not just of the worldly concerns of feeling pleasant or comfortable. So it counts. So you might get home at the end of the day, you might be exhausted. It's worth looking. Why are we exhausted? Maybe we're having that inner battle to at least acknowledge that you're trying to put in the effort there. So before I go on, any questions or comments?
I just wanted to be clear when you said to, don't blame the good self. Are you pointing the finger to the emotions? What are you pointing your finger to? I just want to be clear.
No, so the emotions are like a result. They're not a cause. So what we'd actually say is the afflictive states of mind are the cause. That's where we point it to. So if we're pointing out there, we can't point to the person. We have to point to the afflictive states of mind that are dominating the person. And when we're pointing to us, oh, well, it's all my fault, then which me am I pointing to? And normally when we feel it's all my fault, we're not thinking it's the fault of my confusion and afflictive states of mind. We're thinking me, little me, trying to be a good person. So we're being like a bully towards ourselves. So we've got to really make sure wherever we point, we're pointing at the afflictive states of mind, not at our good qualities, not at our kindness, our compassion, our nascent wisdom that's all there, deeper, more fundamental to us than the afflictive states of mind, because the afflictive states of mind are distortions.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okie dokie. So that's the habits for unhappiness. We can all recognize those. From the Buddhist point of view, the 10 non-virtuous actions. This is what they are. But even if we don't overtly do them, we have the more subtle level that just underpins a lot of modern life. And so we can see why it is so problematic, why there is so much suffering around, out there. But happiness is also a habit. So remember, happiness isn't something that happens to us. Happiness is something we cultivate. If we're just waiting for happiness to happen to us, it's like waiting for Godot. It'll just never happen. Happiness is a habit. It's an activity. So here is a great quote from Paul McKenna, who he's a hypnotist, and I really, really like him. He's not a Buddhist or anything, but so much of his work is very in line, is parallel to Buddhist practice because it's evidence-based. So this is what he says. Happiness is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day, while misery is simply a few errors of judgment and bad habits repeated every day. So doesn't this make it doable? If we, instead of just being overwhelmed by our feelings or our hopes or our fears, when we recognize that actually our happy state of mind, our state of positivity or hope, confidence, satisfaction is actually based on a few simple disciplines practiced every day. That's it. Misery, so much of our misery, of our depression and anxiety, is a few errors of judgment, the afflictive states of mind, and bad habits repeated every day, and then it gets away from us. So when we look at it like this, then happiness is an activity. It can become a habit. It's not something we have to purchase. We don't have to have money for it. It's not a random occurrence that we have no control over. I hope one day I'll be happy. It's something we can practice until it comes naturally. So normally the destructive states of mind, the afflicted states of mind, all the distortions, the distorted ways that we view ourselves and we view others, they're kind of like the fuel for unhappiness. So people who are unhappy continuously, that are continuously down, it's the main thing that's driving that is habit. And what locks it in day after day after day are negative habits that maintain an unhappy state of mind. So if we can identify those and undo them and then practice the habits for happiness, then happiness will result. Happy people are happy not because better things happen to them. Happy people are happy because they have habits that maintain that state of mind. So it's great. We can actually change now. So with training, virtuous minds become easier. This is really good news. The training with the virtuous minds becoming happier means that just like when you're riding a bicycle, the first few pedals are really hard, aren't they? But then the momentum comes, it gets easier. So at first, when we're trying to practice virtue, act well, communicate well, have good mental hygiene, it takes effort. But there comes a time where that effort develops its own momentum and then it becomes easy. And then when things change, even when terrible things happen, our natural response won't be to collapse. Our natural response will actually be to have confidence, to be virtuous and positive. So what we end up with is then a baseline of natural, realistic optimism instead of a baseline of cynicism and fear and resentment, which is often what we start with just through the habit of the ages from a Buddhist point of view of lifetimes. We can change this just through some training to be realistic. And realism isn't being cynical. Realism has a natural optimism in it. Like they say, is the glass half full or half empty? It's in our attitude. So there are some ways that we can do this, how to get started. 3 things I just thought to put in to do with body, speech, and mind. So in terms of the mind, a gratitude journal and the practice of rejoicing. So gratitude is where we practice feeling lucky. We look at our life and we notice the things that we're lucky, that we just think, wow, I'm so lucky. Like the fact that we have our morning cup of tea or coffee. Oh, wow. How lucky am I? So many people don't have that. Phew. Often it's the little things that make us feel really lucky. It can also be that when we look at what's happening in the world, I'm so lucky that I'm here while it's happening and not somewhere else where circumstances are far worse. So a gratitude journal is really good to do, not just with the physical things, the levels of comfort, the happiness that comes from the senses, but also how lucky am I that I can help others? How lucky am I that I have something to share? That I have the mental space and resilience to be able to get out of myself and actually help others in their well-being. And then even the deeper level of happiness, gratitude for how incredibly fortunate and lucky I am that I've met the Dharma, that I have a way out of cyclic existence to liberation from all problems forever. So gratitude, it's a huge one. The other practice for our mind, habit for happiness, is rejoicing. So rejoicing is a little bit different from gratitude, because rejoicing, you're rejoicing in your virtue, your good qualities, and your positive actions. So it's not rejoicing in the good stuff that's happened to us, but rejoicing in what you're doing, your activities. And rejoicing in the activities of everybody else, in the countless kindnesses that people show every day that never make the news, and rejoicing in the virtue and the good-heartedness of our gurus, of our teachers. So rejoicing in virtue is a huge thing, and it makes merit, it makes positive momentum, and it is the single most strongest and easiest way to create happiness. So in terms of the mind, activities of the mind, those two things, gratitude and rejoicing. Then in terms of speech, to practice giving compliments. That's a fantastic habit for happiness. What to do instead of negative speech, to verbalize a compliment, not just, oh, you look nice today, but why? Or not just, oh yeah, I liked the thing that you did, but why I liked it, what virtues it showed of you, so that you start itemizing the compliment, and that way you start rejoicing about the virtue of others, and you bring the attention to others, because like when someone gives us a compliment, what do we normally do? Oh, it was nothing. We just chuck it away, don't we? Because we're uncomfortable about recognizing our own good qualities or our own virtue. It's important that we bring our attention to that. So giving compliments, it's such a tricky thing to have the presence of mind to do. So many times I'll think it, but time goes too fast and I never get a chance to say it. So we don't get a chance to develop that habit of speech, of being kind with our speech. And just a really simple one for the physical activity. So refraining from those ways of, harming others or being aggressive. And instead, there's that whole practice of pay it forward. So whatever good deed others have shown to you, the kindness others have shown to us, then we pay it forward and we show the kindness to somebody else. So, we give some money to the homeless, or we chat to the little old lady on the bus. We share our things. When a windfall comes my way, then I also share some donations that way. So we keep the flow going to pay it forward. And of course, there's that fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, hopefully you've seen it, Pay It Forward. It's really, it's a great movie. I'm not sure if they're the ones that coined it or not, but in terms of your viewing homework, that's the one. Pay it forward. So actually, when we're talking about is the glass half full or the glass half empty, actually, this is the Buddhist point of view. Technically, the glass is always full. Half water, half air. So I think this is a great Buddhist joke, because it really shows dependent arising, relative truth and ultimate truth. It's really what we make of it, isn't it? So, there's what happens to us in the world, but what we make of it determines whether it's positive or negative. And we can choose. We have the potential to choose. We have the presence of mind. We've got our 3 higher trainings that remind us, oh yeah, actually whatever's happening to me, technically the glass is always full. Whatever happens, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, we can benefit from it. I mean, COVID is a very good example, isn't it? We've got this terrible pandemic, changed our life around the world. It's not the first time it's happened, but it's the first time it's happened to me. But at the same time, a renaissance of Dharma teachings. So these 2 things happen simultaneously. And we've got to look at both of them. There's also another cartoon here for us, the optimistic pessimist. On one hand, nothing really matters. On the other hand, so I may as well be happy. So this is really, the conclusion that I came to years and years ago when I was in my late teens. I think I was fallen deeply, madly in love with someone for the first time in that way. And then, of course, it didn't work out, unrequited love. And the emotional storm that I went through. But luckily, I was journaling. I was writing everything down just so that I could try and capture what on earth was going on. And I lost my home, had nowhere to live, no friends, got quite suicidal. And so I started writing those suicidal thoughts down. And I just had in my mind, I've got to keep going until I come to a new thought, instead of just going around and around, which is what we do when we're just thinking, lying awake and at night in bed. If you write it down, I was determined to get to a new conclusion, to a thought I hadn't had before. And what I came to was, okay, there is no point in living. And I wrote that down. There is no reason to live. And then it's kind of like tick, tick, tick. And then it was like, therefore, there is also no reason to die. So therefore, I may as well just stick around and see what happens. And that's how I got out of that suicidal thought, was okay. If, logically, if there's no reason to live, also there is no reason to die. So my curiosity saved me. And to this day, even if I've had suicidal feelings, I've never believed them. They've just been like a wave that's washed over me, and I've known, no, it's not true. I have this safety now. The optimistic pessimist, we may as well just see what's going to happen. We make our own meaning in our life. So now, before we go on, questions, comments about this, about our habits, for how happiness is a habit, anything at all. Remember also, if you're too shy, you can always put it in the chat and Alexis can ask on your behalf. So feel free at any time to just type something into the chat, and then Alexis will just wave at me and say, oh, Miffy. So that's my preamble. Let's have a look at now the neurology of a habit cycle. So the nitty-gritty, how this plays out. Because if we're going to break a negative habit, we have to dismantle it. So let's have a look at the negative habit cycle and then how to wind it back. So this, just before I go on with this, this comes from a book, You Are Not Your Brain by Jeffrey Schwartz. So he was a very interesting, he's a neurologist, and he was a Buddhist for many years, and then the karma ran out and he turned into a Christian. Anyway, in this book, You Are Not Your Brain, he developed this neurology of a habit cycle. So I've taken that, but I've added on to it, and I've added on the Buddhist things to it. So it is a little bit different. I've kind of run with it and added in more. So this neurology of a habit cycle. So what happens? We start off, and it's called feeding the monster, of course. This is how it happens. The input, everything that comes into our, the sense data, everything comes into our senses. What we see, what we hear. And this often elicits a lot of memories, you know, like you smell the smell of popcorn, and you think about movies and all the people that you went to the movies with. It might have been a good experience, a bad experience, and all the memories come flooding in, all the emotions. If you have beautiful music surrounding you, that input has an effect. If you have the sound of roadworks or construction continuously banging next to you, that also has an effect. So all of this input. Plus the emotions that we have, how we wake up in the morning, this cacophony. And what happens is our first response is kind of we like it or we don't like it. And this is called a deceptive brain message, because when we have an experience of it's pleasant or it's unpleasant, it's not necessarily true. And what we have is a response. It's like an alarm goes off. But for instance, I'll give you a couple of examples of this, why it's a deceptive brain message. So if you've ever had sugar cravings, you know, you're going along, you've had your day, whatever, and then you have a sugar craving. We might think that means we want something sweet, but actually a sugar craving is a deceptive brain message. We have sugar cravings when we're low in protein. The last thing that we need is sugar. What we actually need is protein. So it's a message, it's an alarm, but it's a deceptive brain message. There's another example that I really love, which is, I'll just stop the share for a moment. You know, like if you've been to a shopping center and everything's always sparkly, there's lots of chrome, shiny surfaces, glass, lights everywhere, and it's kind of enticing. And I know whenever I see something bling, you know, it's like, ooh, what's that over there? So there's a reason why everything's chrome and everything's shiny, because subliminally, when we see that, what we're actually relating to is clean water. And we are hardwired that whenever we see sparkles, it attracts us to clean, pure water. And so that we're repulsed by stagnant, dirty water that's, you know, not going to be very good for our health. So this is a deep instinctual method that's kept us alive through the ages, from when we were living in little camp huts all the way through. And it's there hardwired into our brain, into our instincts, this incredible attraction to shiny, clean water. So, you know, that's a deceptive brain message. And who knew? You don't have to give your wife a diamond ring. You just give her a beautiful fresh glass of water. So this changed everything for me at the supermarket. So I went from wanting this and wanting that and like stupid impulse buys and all those things, which is of course what it elicits, to just going, I have my water. And once you know it's a deceptive brain message, you see the sparkles and you can just enjoy them. You don't have to go and buy stuff. So, you know, the alarm goes off, the deceptive brain message. But if we're not aware what's happening, then we have this urge, we've got to do something about it. So the sparkle, sparkle, sparkle. Ooh, I'd like it. I'd want it. So we have the urge to relieve the discomfort. whether it's relieve the discomfort of craving by getting the thing, getting the diamonds, or relieve the discomfort of, oh, I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it, by pushing it away. Either way, we are engaging in it. Whether we grasp after it or whether we go, no, 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 not listening, don't want to know, don't want to know, which is often what we do with anxiety and depression. We engage it in that negative way by pushing it away, and that makes it even stronger. So when we do that, then we develop an automatic, habitual, unhealthy response, because the momentary discomfort is relieved, the distress is relieved. So I've put a picture here of ashtray cigarettes, because yes, when you're stressed, you have a cigarette, you calm down, great. Momentarily, yes, it works. Any kind of addiction like this, in the short term, does alleviate the distress. Drinking to assuage our worries, also, yes, it works. Having a nap, just to just click off from the world, in the short term, it works. But what it is, it's a habitual response, and it's unhealthy, because even if it's not directly destructive, like drinking or smoking cigarettes, it is still taking us away from something positive, from doing something positive. So just having a nap, or overeating or undereating, or any of those things, it's destructive in that it means that we're not doing something positive, dealing with the root cause. So we have this momentary relief of the distress. Oh, phew, I've got the diamonds, I've bought the things or whatever. And so what happens, that brain circuit is strengthened. The deceptive brain message is reinforced. We associate relief with that automatic habitual behavior. And then what happens, the next time we get whatever that input is, a dissatisfaction, noise, hunger, thinking about a conversation that happened, then the whole cycle happens again, but it happens quicker and tighter. So when these just negative brain circuits are strengthened, what happens, for instance, with drinking? So you're stressed, and this happens to so many people. The way that they first start dealing with stress is just to have a drink, just to calm down, and it works, and it can work for many, many years, until having a drink becomes toxic in your body, or those issues of why you're stressed start spilling out into the rest of life. But because we've associated having a drink with calming down, this other thing happens. And what it is that then every time that we're calm, we want to drink. We've hardwired it into our brain. And so that addictive behavior becomes stronger. So then drinking without awareness, drinking all the time. When you're happy, you go, oh, let's have a drink, because it all gets associated together. So then in the end, you crave a drink when you're happy as well as when you're stressed. So this habit, it's why it's called feeding the monster. It gets so ingrained. Emotional habit, intellectually with our reasoning, it's all over the show because we believe the deceptive brain message, and then it gets wired into our brain and then into our physiology. So, oh my gosh, what do we do? How do we deconstruct? So deconstructing the negative habit cycle. So instead of feeding the monster, we're looking at natural flourishing. And instead of with the input, how we normally, what comes in, we try and control everything out there. We try and shut the neighbors up. We try and change how our family treats us. We change our job. We put on different music. We buy different things. We try and control everything out there, which, as we know, is uncontrollable. It's a very tenuous holding pattern at best. We can't control that. We can't control the weather. We can't control our health, all of those things. So the input, what we can control, is our mind. And we can get proactive about this. And how we do it is, in the morning, when you wake up, you set your motivation. You preempt everything. So instead of out there trying to change everything, we change our mind. And when we're setting our motivation, it's like practicing our habits for happiness. And whatever motivation we have, the minimum it should be is, whatever I do today, I'm going to try and help others. And if I cannot help them, I will not harm them. That's it. We can also reflect it back on ourselves. Whatever I do today, I'm going to try and help myself, educate myself, be kind to myself. And whatever happens, I'm not going to harm myself. I'm not going to be judgmental. I'm not going to flagellate myself. I'm not going to harm. So harm minimization, that's half of the equation, to at least refrain from harm. And then, you know, if you've got a bit of extra energy, then whatever good that you can do. And in that motivation, a little bit of gratitude. Wow, how lucky I am that I woke up today. Several of our members died this week. They did not wake up today, but I did. Phew. So already I'm feeling a bit better about the day. If we do that, and if we set our motivation, it's like in the Matrix, you know, the red pill or the blue pill. Once you set your motivation in one direction, then the rest of your day is informed by that. And actually, when we get really good at setting our motivation, all the rest of this habit cycle won't even happen. If we set a really strong motivation before we leave the house, doesn't matter what happens to us throughout the day, it's going to be beneficial for us. We'll be able to use it in some way. But if we forget, if our motivation's a little bit weak, then instead of having the alarm go off of, oh, don't like it, mindfulness. And this is this second one, push pause. This is the purpose of mindfulness, is when something feels good or feels bad, instead of just racing towards it or rejecting it, to just stop for a moment, pause, breathe, become aware. Oh, what's this sensation? What's my physical sensation? What's my mental sensation? What's my emotional sensation? So the way I push pause is I just go, oh, that's interesting. Here comes this wave of depression. How interesting. Here comes this craving desire. How interesting. So kind of examine it for a moment. And then you can figure out, is it a deceptive brain message or not? We can formalize this as a meditation practice, silent sitting, just remembering to watch the breath and not get involved in anything else. It's pushing pause. So what this does is it stops the speed of the momentum. It also means that we don't buy into the deceptive brain message. And so the whole negative habit pattern can stop right here. It doesn't have to escalate after this. You know, we bring a bit of mindfulness to it. We go, oh yeah, actually that's just a sensation. It's not telling me, it's not what it's telling me is not true. I can relax. So a lot of things will just be like water off a duck's back. We won't lose our energy. And it doesn't come from suppression. It actually just comes from pausing. Like Venerable Robina says, not panicking. So then what if we lose our mindfulness and the urge to relieve the discomfort? Well, then if we go, absolutely positively have to have a cigarette, then you just go, okay, but not just yet. So we practice some discipline. This is where discipline comes in. So the discipline is to acknowledge the feeling, acknowledge the urge, and to not act on it straight away. So the rule of thumb neurologically for rewiring our brain is 15 minutes, a pause. So you want to buy the thing, okay, in 15 minutes. So I go, yes, Miffy, you can have it, just not yet. What's the time? Okay, in 15 minutes. Revisit this sensation in 15 minutes. So you have a little pause. Or you have this huge tumultuous feeling wash over you. You're going, no. You're just about to shut down. You go, it's okay. I'm just going to sit with this for a moment. You have the urge to act or to react or to have a drink or to have a cigarette. You go, one of the best ways for this one is you go, yes, you can have one, but only on the third time that you think of it. So the first time you think, I could just kill for a cigarette. Nope, number one. It might be 10 minutes later that you think, I'd love a cigarette. And this is actually how I gave up smoking. And go, okay, yes, Miffy, you can have one, but not just yet. That's the second time. And then it might be 30 seconds later. You go, I'd love a cigarette. Okay, you can have one. But what you're doing is you're putting a space in between the urge and the fulfilling it. The best thing is to go, okay, yes, you can have a cigarette, but not until the urge goes. So you want the cigarette, the one, you just sit with it. And then the urge subsides. And then once the urge has subsided, then you can just decide whether to have one or not. Same thing for eating, just comfort eating or boredom eating. You have the urge, but then, as Corey Jackson says, then you stand in front of the fridge, you don't open the door. Stand in front of the fridge and you wait until that urge for ice cream completely subsides. And then you open the door. So what this does, this neurologically rewires your brain, because the whole time that you're going, I want it, it's going one way, and your discipline is rewiring it. The fact that there's tension there is evidence it's working, is evidence that your brain is being rewired. It's evidence that you're changing your habits. So it's a good sign. So we need discipline. Discomfort is evidence the brain is being rewired. It's just like when you get sore muscles at the gym. It's evidence that you're building the muscles. So neurologically, Jeffrey Schwartz found that even if it's just 90 seconds of discipline between the urge and acting on it, that will help to rewire the brain, even just 90 seconds. But the best is about 15 minutes. And then you're just about to bust, okay? So you've just done all the discipline that you can, and you're just about to say the thing or buy the thing or do the whatever it is. Then the next thing is to change the channel. Distract yourself. So instead of having a cigarette, have an apple. People do this with little kids and babies, don't they? They put the rattle in front of them and go, oh, look at this. So the difficulty with this, and I mean, we do it with adults too, entertainment, is that we've skipped the previous steps. We go straight to change the channel. And this is why it's not effective, because we have a sense of dissatisfaction and then we distract ourselves by changing the channel. Let's do this or let's do that. And it's not effective because we haven't had the mindfulness of the discipline beforehand. So changing the channel comes only when we're about to bust out and do that negative behavior. Then we're going to do something positive instead. So once the negative cycle is up and running, it's like the toothpaste, you know, you can't put it back in the tube. Once the adrenaline's going through our body, we can't put it back in again. So that's when we change the channel. And so this means, for instance, that if you're in a terrible funk, if you're ruminating, if you're going over and over and over all the negativities and you're getting more and more down, talking about it is not going to help. Reasoning is not going to help. Actually, what's going to help is physically getting up and going for a walk, changing your environment, even going from sitting in this chair to going and sitting in that chair. And as we know, when we get very anxious or very depressed, we can't even move, can we? We can't even get out of bed or out of our chair. So even if we just go into another room, it's going to change the channel. It's going to have a difference, make a difference for us. Now, often people will change the channel. They won't have an apple, they'll have a vodka, which is what I did. So what we've got to replace it with has two characteristics. It's got to be something enjoyable. So it's not a punishment. We're not making ourselves suffer. It's not like wearing the hair shirt. It's got to be something we like doing, that we, you know, like crochet, patting the cat, having a bath, going for a walk in nature, playing music, singing in a choir, all of those things, whatever. Something enjoyable and something that is long-term beneficial. So that's why a case of champagne isn't the answer, because it may be enjoyable, but it's not long-term beneficial, as anyone who's had a hangover knows. So we've got to plan this one beforehand. We've got to have a list of things to do that we can just jump into with the momentum that we know are safe and good, that we like doing and have a long-term beneficial effect. And so then if we do that, then our skills will grow. We are actually rewiring the brain. We are changing our negative habit, negative impulses into positive ones. And this is actually, it becomes resilience, and a natural confidence will grow within us. And this is practicing habits for happiness. And then what happens, of course, is when we wake up in the morning, because we're already primed in this positive way, we're going to naturally see the glass half full. We're going to naturally gravitate towards all the things that are going well in our life, instead of naturally gravitate towards the things going badly. So it will appear that the world is getting better, that people are nicer, that things are finally working out. But it's not. It's just that our input, what we're focusing on, has changed. So it becomes this cycle of natural flourishing. Oh, so before I go on, what comments or questions do you have about this, of actually deconstructing the negative habits and then what to do at each step along the way? Any of the stages there that you had a question about or wanted more explanation? Do you think it's doable? I mean, you could have a lot of fun getting a list of the things that you're going to do instead. I've got a couple of lists like that. One is, if I ever get money, I have to have a list of all the things I'm going to spend my money on, because when I have no money, I have a huge idea. The moment I get money, I just go blank. And I often just waste it, burns a hole in my pocket. So I have my list. Oh, yes, I wanted to do this, 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 and this. So the same thing with changing the channel. Have a list of things that you can go, oh, yes, these are the things. Okay, I'll do that one. Now there was a chat.
Do you want me to read?
How to break the habits of watching and listening to YouTube to fall asleep. Oh, yeah. So this is a terrible thing in our culture. We've been taught to read ourselves to sleep. Oh, what a conflicting thing. We're trying to develop our wisdom and also, you know, go unconscious. Like the two things don't go well together. So one of the things, watching YouTube or reading or whatever, either we're doing it for entertainment or we're doing it to learn. So I think if we're just aware of the of our purpose, often the only way that we can relax is when we sleep. And so what's happened is we've associated going unconscious, a sinking mind and sleep with relaxation, and we have no idea how to relax and stay alert. Maybe the time where we do have a chance to do that is when we go on holiday. So often we go on holiday, you know, the first few days you just sleep and then you start getting your energy back again. And then you might be relaxed, but now you're alert, you're refreshed. So reading yourself to sleep or watching, you know, things to go to sleep, you've got to really pick the things. So we're not associating our study or our thinking or our development with unconsciousness. So, you know, maybe picking a nice theme or a music or something like that that is actually relaxing, that you don't have to focus on, that you can associate with sleep, and it's okay. But say reading a Dharma book until you're sleepy, you are going to associate every time you pick up that Dharma book, you are rewiring your brain to fall asleep. Then you go to teachings and you fall asleep immediately. This is why. The other thing that you can do is, and especially if you have a long day, you're really tired, go to sleep early, let yourself fall asleep, and then wake up at 2 or 3 or 4 and do your practices. There's nothing wrong with that. Many people say, oh, you know, I get home, I put the kids to sleep, and as I'm putting them to sleep, I fall asleep, you know, 8 or 9 at night. And then I wake up in a fright at 2 a.m. Oh my gosh, I haven't done my commitments, or I haven't done my meditation or whatever. So actually, this can become a good habit. Many people throughout the ages have had broken sleep, had 2 shifts of sleeping. And you can work it in really nicely. There's a time in the morning, pre-dawn, where it's very powerful to study, to, you know, all the coarse minds have actually rested and fallen away. So you wake up and you've actually got a more subtle mind at play. And it's before everything in the world has encroached on you. And so what you read and what you study and how you do your practices can be quite deep. So let yourself do that. And it might be an hour or 2, hour and a half an hour. Then when you feel that you're getting a bit drowsy again, dedicate the merits, put it down and go back to sleep. Sleep in 2 shifts. Neurologically, your brain waves will still be at, they're not going to be in the normal hyper day-to-day kind of thing. It's going to be much more in that sleep level. So you will actually still get the rest that you need from sleep. So thank you for that question. Now, some handy little hints just before we finish. To summarize, handy hints. Okay, so if we're going to break our negative habit patterns, habits don't go away by themselves. We can't just hope that they will disappear if we don't pay any attention to them. In fact, karmically, what happens with a habit, if we ignore it, it will naturally grow. Karma is expandable. So negative habits, they're just going to keep on growing, whether we're paying attention to them or not, by default. And in the end, they will end up defining us. So we have to deconstruct them. How? It's actually not how we feel about it or not how we think that matters. It's what we do. It's how we respond to those urges, to those deceptive brain messages. So at first, when the deceptive brain message comes up, oh, I'd like some diamonds, don't worry about that tension. Don't worry about the craving. Just pay attention to what you're doing, which is pausing, which is putting a gap between the urge and acting on it. And then how you feel about it will change. But to not worry about how you feel about it at first. And the way that I've managed to do that is to just go to call my feelings emotional sensations, because they're not that profound most of the time. We have physical sensations and we have emotional sensations, and they're quite fickle. But because they're emotional, we think there's some incredible meaning and depth in them. But actually, no, it's just an emotional sensation and it'll pass. Focus on what we're doing. For the unpleasant things, pain, for instance, emotional pain or physical pain, it's unpleasant, but it's important. So we looked at this last week, didn't we, with depression and anxiety. An unpleasant emotional sensation. We don't like it, but then the deceptive brain message then goes, therefore it's bad and I don't want it, and then we push away. So recognize pain. It's our pain system kicking in, protecting us, telling us to pay attention. It's important. We have to listen to it. If we don't listen to it, we're going to miss out on a whole spectrum of experience and growth. Emotions are emotional signals, so pay attention. They can help us. So instead of thinking, oh, they're good or bad, depending on how they feel, get in a little bit deeper. What's the message? Where's the wisdom in there? And don't give up what you want most for what you want now. So, what I want most is peace of mind, open heart, curiosity about the world. That's the long-term thing. But what I want now is a glass of vodka. So a glass of vodka for many years, alcoholic for many, many years. A glass of vodka gave me what I wanted now, but at the incredible expense of long-term peace of mind. So how we do it isn't by focusing on what we want now, it's by remembering this bigger picture. So at least the bigger picture of our becoming our best self, of becoming a good human being, of contributing to the world. But from a Buddhist point of view, it's not just this life, it's not just ourselves, it's everybody. And it's what happens after this life as well. What we want most, liberation from all problems forever. That's what we want most. So that will let us release our immediate and very kind of fickle concerns. And they're the ones that actually distract us from the happiness that we seek. So I have a quote here from Lama Yeshe. So this great book, Peaceful Stillness of the Silent Mind. He sums it up so nicely. He says, no matter what sort of mental problem you experience, instead of getting nervous and fearful, sit back, relax, and be as silent as possible. In this way, you will automatically be able to see reality and understand the root of the problem. When we experience problems, either internal or external, our narrow, unskillful mind only makes them worse. When someone with an itchy skin condition scratches it, he or she feels some temporary relief and thinks, oh, the scratching's made it better. But in fact, the scratching has made it worse. We're like that. We do the same thing every day of our lives. So instead of trying to stop problems like this, we should relax and rely on our skillful, silent mind. It's so nice, isn't it? So in our conclusion then, the summary, to be our best self, we just stop feeding the monster. It's like what was his name? Paul McKenna was saying, that our happiness, a few simple disciplines, states of mind practiced each day, our misery, just a few errors of judgment and negative habits each day. So we can actually stop feeding the monster, deconstruct. Happiness is a habit, it's an activity as well. So it's not just the thing that happens to us. We can cultivate happiness so that we're naturally happy. And we can dismantle our negative habits, not force them down until they're just not there anymore. So in the worksheets for the future, there is a little thing in there, I think, in your worksheets called Going Dotty. This also comes from Paul McKenna on the habits worksheet. So you can do this for the future as a way of focusing on these positive qualities with little colored dots around the house, but you can also get some prayer flags and put different colored prayer flags around the house. And so take a few days to set it up, that every time your eye alights on the yellow prayer flag, you think of 3 happy memories, 3 great things. You remember them. It can also be 3 qualities of, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or the Guru. So 3 wonderful memories. Every time your eye alights on the red one, remember 3 people who love you. The big red love heart. 3 people who love you. So even if you're having a terrible day, there are 3 people that love you, that care about you. For the green, every time your eye lights on the green, 3 things that you're looking forward to in the future, you might like to be doing in the future, planning. With the blue, 3 qualities that you've recognized in your own mind, in your Dharmakaya mind, in the Dharmakaya blue. 3 qualities that you recognize that you have, that, that the nature of our mind is the same as the nature of the Buddha's mind. So we've got to start actually recognizing that. And the white one, the last one. So every time you see a white prayer flag, remember all the ways of non-harm, non-attachment, not retaliating. So the peaceful, calm, white moonlight of non-harmfulness. All the ways that you've managed to minimize harm, to not retaliate. So you might have to have a little notebook. It's going to take a while to set this up, but this is an enormously fun way to develop a positive habit. And especially when you see the prayer flags or any of these 5 colors of the 5 wisdoms, this is a way of transforming our mind. We need reminders. We need a memory jolt, and it makes it very easy to bring that kind of mindfulness, which is remembering. Because there's heaps that remind us of negative things, isn't there? We don't need to bring any mindfulness to that already. The momentum is there. So we've got to start a positive momentum. So the going dotty, I think, with the dots, we can take it a step further and recognize this ties in with the five aggregates purified into the 5 wisdoms. So as a habit for happiness, I hope that works. And Alexis was saying, filling in the worksheets. So please enjoy filling in the worksheets and keep them. And maybe in 2 or 3 months' time, go back and revisit them, and you'll see your answers have changed. And you will have positive, concrete proof right there in front of you that you have developed as a human being. It's so gratifying. It's a real kick to see that, because often day to day, we don't see the progress. But if you see, wow, I am a completely different person from last year, here's proof. It gives you a big sense of inner confidence. So we've come to the end of this course, and I've enormously enjoyed my time with you. So thank you so much. And I hope we get to spend some time together again, either on our wonderful net of light on the Zoom, or possibly one day in person. Let's really dedicate all of our efforts, acknowledge your efforts, your good-heartedness, all of your hopes and dreams that you brought to this course, and then dedicate everything that we've done in this course together. May it go towards becoming your best self, which is nothing less than a fully enlightened Buddha. That's the potential. So everything may go in that direction. And as it does, may we bring everybody along with us. And that way, from this day forth, we'll be able to really help everyone in our life, in the world. If not now physically, immediately, but in our heart, the momentum is going that way. So let's dedicate it for ourselves and for all living beings without exception, for the best possible outcome.
Miffy, on behalf of the center, we just wanted to thank you for all of your wonderful teachings, and we're really grateful that we have this ongoing relationship with you, and we really hope that you'll come back soon.
It's very kind of you, Venerable, and so nice to see you today. Thank you for your kind words, and you know, for all of the amazing tech work that you do behind the scenes. I'm astonished. Thank you for being a Venerable as well. It's always so nice to see the Sangha. And Alexis, thank you so much for being a host. You've just been very supportive and wonderful. So that's great.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you, everybody. Take care. Stay in touch. Bye.
Thank you, Miffy. Thank you so much. Good night.